Greetings, everyone. Thank you for attending this code session 2745. Today, we are going to discuss about modern vSphere monitoring and, of course, dashboarding using InfluxDB, Telegraf, and Grafana. My name is Jorge de la Cruz, and I'm a blogger and vExpert. I hope you enjoyed this session. Quick agenda for today, for this session. There are a few points, and we are going to elaborate all of them as soon as we move over the slides. First point, it's the problems I have solved by choosing time series databases, which is, of course, the technology that we're going to use to store all of these hundreds, thousands, millions of metrics of our vSphere environment. The next point, it will be monitoring 101. We're going to take a quick overview around monitoring basics and so on. Then we're going to move into more VMware vSphere monitoring, much more in depth. Finally, we are going to discuss what is InfluxDB, what is Telegraf, what is Grafana, and finally, just to wrap up all the session, we are going to see a demo. I think on the demo side, we will see if it will be a real life demo or just a few slides which I have prepared for you. So as I was saying, let me do a quick introduction for myself. My name is Jorge de la Cruz. I've been blogging on jorgedelacruz.es since September 2011. So that is already 10 years of blogging. And it has been a really good ride. Just blogging everything around VMware, all the open source projects that I've been touching, Veeam, well, and so on and so forth. So now, recently as well, a few years ago, I created as well the jorgedelacruz.uk. You can just go there and check a lot of stuff around VMware and other technologies, open source technologies. This monitoring, for example, that we are discussing today, you can find it as well on the .uk or the .es in the case that you speak Spanish. I wrote more than 1,000 articles. They have been published already. I think I crossed that mark probably last year around this time. Let me tell you that those are a lot of articles. But yeah, it's always good to keep, the mind active. And of course, all of these articles that I prepare is always with having in my mind that at some point it will help somebody somewhere at some point. Last year, it was more than 600,000 visits. Comparing with other years, might be a bit less, but I think last year it was difficult enough. And I think what everyone was having in their minds, it was not to read much IT articles or IT blogs. So I think that's probably across all the bloggers, because people were much busier with other more important topics, I'm afraid. So husband and father as well. I just wanted to add it there, because those are two of my most important highlights on my life, and I'm really proud of both of them. Now, the problems that I have solved by choosing time series. So let's start with the purpose-built technology, right? So when you are choosing to store or to monitor, just starting with the thinking about monitoring, a complex environment like is VMware vSphere with a lot of VMs, with inside every VM with a lot of metrics that you will like to pull and of course store in some database for you to query later on, just to see the performance over the last week, over the last month, over the last year even. So you need a technology that is purpose-built technology built for this. It's not the same. You cannot store this on a Microsoft SQL with a granularity of every 30 seconds or every 15 seconds or 20, like vCenter does for the real time, because it will not cope later on when you try to query all of those millions or billions of metrics. So choosing a purpose-built technology for time series, it was quite important. I solved that by choosing time series on this case, InfluxDB. The installation and configuration time, I didn't want a product that it was so complex that it will take me, I don't know, like weeks or months to implement. I know that some products over there, or some even projects, open source projects over there. They give you like a really nice visibility across everything, but they are complex to deploy and complex to configure. So I didn't want that. And by choosing this stack of the Telegraf, InfluxDB, and Grafana, I was up and running, and hopefully you will be up and running within minutes. Easy to find and well documented. Once again, I really like to write and prepare blogs for myself and for others to consume, but I wanted a product that it was all the documentation was ready to consume, and it wasn't that difficult to find, what I was trying to do. In this case, the documentation around Telegraf, the plugin around VMware, it was extremely well documented, super simple, and once again, in a few minutes, I was up and running. So that was really good. And by choosing time series and this tick stack, which I will explain later, it really helped me. So what else? The technology that scales, starting small. I started that small, and I prepared a blog about this before. You can even start this way. I started with a Raspberry Pi. On a Raspberry Pi, I put there the InfluxDB, I put there the Telegraf, I put the Grafana even, and then with that, I was just I used that as my monitoring center. Then later on, I moved it into a VM, and I just gave it more CPU and more RAM because I had a lot of VMs. But I wanted that technology that I could start extremely small, as in a Raspberry Pi, and I could move bigger if I needed into a VM, into a cluster, in the cloud, for example, on Kubernetes containers, and that gives me this flexibility, this time series, this Telegraf, Grafana, and InfluxDB. So that was really, really good. Another problem that I solve is like all the monitoring is good. All the metrics are really, really good and really useful, but I wanted dashboards ready to consume. I wanted beautiful and useful dashboards. And picking specifically on this case Grafana as a part of the whole solution, it really gave me the best dashboarding technology that it's out there, to my point of view, of course. Finally, the open source core, easy to contribute. I'm not a developer, so I will not contribute heavily into the development of the code of this tick stack. But well, it's important for me to it's important for me that from time to time I can contribute even on the documentation, or even on maybe even reporting bugs or reporting a feature request. And by choosing an open source project, you can do all of those things extremely, extremely simple. In other commercial products, it's a bit more difficult. First, to contribute, to expand even the documentation of official products. Official and private products. Sometimes it's difficult to contribute on those documentation. And in the code, probably you don't have any chance to contribute into the code, because usually it's source code and you cannot decompile it and so on. So all of these six are the problems that I have solved by choosing time series, which means InfluxDB, Telegraf, and Grafana. So monitoring 101. This section is going to be quick and simple, I hope. So let's go a deep dive into that. What is time series? I mean, I've been mentioning time series for a few minutes already. Maybe you're wondering, okay, Jorge, but what is time series? This is one of the best explanations, visual explanations, that I could find on the internet. So the source is there here on the slide, and you can see that on the left you have the classical relational databases, where you have, well, all the tables, right, and the name, the age, the nickname, the employee, all the relationships, normal databases, right? But you can see the time series databases. What is it? It's like, but every timestamp you have, well, on this case, what we have is the sensor temperature, but you have different tags with different values. So, for example, on the case of VMware, you will have a timestamp, for example, right now, and then on this timestamp, you will have a tag, like, for example, VM name. It will be that VM name, whatever, like, for example, Active Directory. And on the metrics, you will have like the CPU, the RAM, the disk, and so on and so forth. So that is what is time series database. In every timestamp, is just different tags, and per those tags, all the values at that specific timestamp. And this scales up to millions or billions. And I think I have another slide over here. This is the ingest rate of PostgreSQL, which is, well, a normal database to storing data, but not billion of of metrics, same as a time series. And you have the time scale over here as well. You can see that the ingest, the insert rate, the rows per second, and the data set. So as it keeps growing, the insert rate, it goes really down for PostgreSQL, meaning the performance degrades extremely bad, while a product like Timescale or like InfluxDB or some other time series keeps steady, and the performance keeps keeps coping with your data set size. So that was quite important. Hopefully you find this comparison useful. And once again, it was just to explain quickly, I think maybe 2 minutes, what is time series. So SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. This is an ancient technology as old as the internet. It's still relevant, by the way. So a lot of devices out there. The only way to monitor things is with SNMP. So first thing is, like, who really named this protocol simple? I mean, if you have been using SNMP for years, you know that is everything but simple, especially when you try to query later on. We will see MIBs. It becomes extremely complex. So some important things that I want you to bear in mind in the case that you're using SNMP is, like, while using it, please use the version 3, which it has that extra security and encryption. So use this at all times. Never use version 1 or version 2C, please, because you are exposing too much data, too much critical data over the network. Even if you have that network secure, the SNMP port and so on, I would recommend to use version 3 for security reasons. Obtain the most up-to-date MIB, and we will see a MIB on the next slides. VMware does a really good job with the MIBs. Usually they are up to date, or it just takes maybe a few weeks, or in a few weeks usually you can find new products that VMware has released. You can find the MIBs up to date. So that's really good, and keep doing that, please. Try to avoid the public SNMP community. It's at the end is kind of the source of the attacks over SNMP, to try to sniff data, to try to sniff IPs of the environment. Hackers or man in the middle, or, well, anyone is going to try to query that public SNMP community. So try to avoid that. Really put any other name other than public. How to not enable SNMP on VCSA. So if you right now go to Google and put, like, hey, how to enable SNMP on VCSA, you are going to see maybe a lot of blogs and even the official documentation that it helps you to configure it using version 1 or version 2C, which is the commands here at the bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom with the big forbidden signal over here icon. So please, if you log into the VCSA and run the snmp.get, you will get something like that. If it's enabled or not, you can of course enable it later on with the snmp.enable. But the configuration, please bear in mind, do not use the version 1 or version 2C, and follow the official steps on the VMware website. It's just a section which says how to enable it using version 3. So please use those version 3s. Yes, I just wanted to show you here how doesn't need to be done. And how to not enable SNMP on ESXi. Again, if you just want to monitor just the ESXi's, the SNMP, which, by the way, it's really good, because it gives you the ESXi's version, it gives you the ESXi patch level, which by using other technologies, like for example this Telegraf that I'm going to show you, you cannot retrieve that data, at least today, with that. So still SNMP, it has some use cases, but these are the steps that you do not need to follow for to enable SNMP on ESXi. Once again, when you are on the VMware website, just choose how to enable it for version 3. I just wanted to show you the examples that you do not need to follow. Let's talk about MIBs, right? So what is MIB? At the end is an acronym for Management Information Base, and it's kind of like a map, a big map of what is the application or the hardware or operating system, anything, what is exposing the data that is exposing over SNMP. So at the end, once again, it's just a map of metrics that is exposing. So if you talk from the start, you will see the root, you will see the ISO is kind of usually is the 1. Later on, it will be the identified organization, DoD, Internet Management System, and then finally the sysdescriber. So once again, when you later on try to have the OID, the whole number for SNMP, usually is 1.3.6.1.2.1, and then you can just have different system descriptions. And as you can see, this is the opposite of simple. Once again, SNMP can be many things, but it is not simple to my point of view. What about if we talk about VMware? So for example, for VMware, this is just a few examples. So if you want to get something from the VMware system, what will you have? Then you will have the 1.3.6.1.4.1. Then finally, kind of the VMware ID. So it will be 6876. And then later on, it will be for notifications, one that will be 0. And then after that, it will be any other system descriptions that these MIB for notifications can expose the system. Exactly the same. The resources, the LDAP, the SRM is the 51 dot something. Even the experimental, that will be the .700, documentation 750, and obsolete 800. So take a look into the MIBs of VMware. I know that once again they are up to date. Even for Tanzu, I've seen a few SNPs as well, a few MIBs. So just take a look and download those as soon as possible if you are using SNMP on your systems. Just wanted to show you an example of when you do an SNMPWALK. That is really good because an SNMPWALK, it will query that vCenter, that ESXi quickly, and it's going to show you everything that that application is exposing, which you will need to probably do a more on the command because the pagination is going to be absolutely massive. It's going to be really big. So you can see here why you need to really try to secure this with version 3, with the ports, with both, because at the end, SNMP is exposing things as the like the version that this vCenter is, the build number as well, and it's exposing as well the host name. And if I keep scrolling, which I'm not going to show you over here, it's going to show a lot of things like networking cards, IPs, and so on. VM names, you can even query them using some SNMPs. So that information probably needs to be as secure as possible, please. Now, if we move into the next section, which is the VMware vSphere monitoring, the deep visibility of what is going on inside our vSphere environment. I think what we are trying to get monitoring probably, these are the 4 components: the CPU usage, so CPU usage per cluster, per host, and per VM in percentage and in megahertz. That's probably kind of table stakes, super basic. The RAM usage, exactly the same. The RAM usage per cluster, per host, and per VM in gigabytes. Probably you can just play it in percentage as well. You can have it super simple in Grafana later on. Datastores, Datastores usage in percentage for the capacity, the VMFS reads and writes, and the IOPS and total latency. Finally, all of this combined per VM, right? So the per VM stats, I'm pretty sure that you want to know how your VMs are performing in VM usage, CPU, RAM, disk, once again, the reads and writes, and IOPS and total latency. I think this is probably what you're trying to achieve, and that is what we are going to do, and we're going to be able to do following these next slides. So Finally, the combination of the TIC stack, right? The Telegraf, InfluxDB, and Grafana. I think people call it on the internet. A lot of people they call it TIC stack, and to me, it is a perfect combination of open source projects. Which are these open source projects? So we have them over here. This is a simple diagram to understand the components. We have that InfluxDB at the bottom right. That is the database, the time series, purpose-built to store millions and millions of metrics or timestamps with data. That is the database. Then we will have the Telegraf. Telegraf is the agent that you can install once again on a Raspberry Pi. You can just install it inside like a Linux VM. And that is the lightweight agent that is going to pull all of the data from the vCenter or, well, from different applications. Telegraf, it has so many input plugins, but in this case, it's good that they have a native plugin for VMware. And finally, so the Telegraf recollects all of this data, send it into InfluxDB, and finally, on Grafana, you can just visualize in a really, really good way, simple, beautiful, and gorgeous way, all of your data per ESXi, VMs, clusters, and so on. So, how you can start monitoring your your environment today, your VMware environment today? We have two options. One is the ready to work, which of course is with Telegraf. Telegraf, you can install it, as I've said, on a Raspberry Pi or on a VM inside your environment, or even outside. It just needs to be on Linux. Can be on Windows as well, so you can install it on some VMs that you have already running on your environment. You can put Telegraf on Windows there, and we are going to see the configuration later on because it's the same. Or if you just want to download it already, kind of everything that we're seeing today, Telegraf, InfluxDB, and Grafana, the TIC stack. You know what? The VMware guys, a few years ago, they published what is called vSAN Performance Monitor, and that is an OVA which is created by VMware. You can find it on the Flinks website, and that is already an OVA with all of these components already: Telegraf, InfluxDB, and Grafana. So you can download it, and it is ready to go. If you want to add later on the dashboards that I've created, and I'll show you in a minute, you can download it officially from the Grafana website. So you go into the Grafana dashboards, you just search by VMware, and you will find my VMware dashboards over there, which they are ready to consume, ready to work on your environment. You can filter them per views or per downloads, and the ones that have more downloads, I think I have 4 or 5. Those are the ones that you should be using. How to configure the Telegraf to start monitoring VMware vSphere. So once again, once you have installed Telegraf, or even if you download this OVA, doesn't matter if you have installed Telegraf on Windows or in Linux, you need to go into the configuration and you need to enable two things. One is the real-time monitoring, and another one is the historical monitoring, right? So for the real-time, you can put the interval there down to 20 seconds if you want, because at the end VMware stores in RAM every 20 seconds. We're going to see that in a minute. And you just need to introduce your vCenter and some username and password. That needs to be read-only, that's fine, but it needs to be from the top vCenter and all the childs down the tree. But it can be read-only, so nothing like an admin or anything like that, just read-only. Now, for this historical instance, that needs to be 300 seconds, because at the end, VMware does not store things that are more than 5 minutes. So we're going to see that now on the next slide. So let's pass to the next slide, because probably it's easier to understand over here. What are the difference between real-time and versus historical? So the vCenter saves the metrics every 20 seconds, and it does save this information in the ESXi RAM. This is perfect to query these metrics much more often. This every 20 seconds, every 30 seconds. I will recommend to for you to put it every 20 seconds, and it's extremely quick. These metrics are stored for a maximum of 1 hour. So when you go into your vCSA and you try to play with the visualization of metrics, even on your vCenter, you will see that the real time is just 1 hour always. And then if you want something else, it will be from the historical. This is limited. It's not storing everything. It's just storing ESXi and VM's metrics, such as CPU, RAM, and networking. So once again, ESXi's and VM metrics only. Now, for the things that are stored in ranges of every 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, and 24 hours, that is called historical. And vCenter saves that all of this data into the PostgreSQL database. So at the end, that's more heavy to query. And for that reason, on the configuration of the agent, it's much better that you differentiate between these two. That is the information around the data stores, around data centers, and around clusters as well. So hopefully you understood now the difference between real time and historical. And when you configure the agent, you bear in mind and know what is what. Now, the moment that everyone was expecting, right? Demo time. So if you see something or you like or have a question during the demo, please just put it on the comments, and I'll try to answer them. Later on probably on social media. The first demo that I wanted to show you is the whole VMware vSphere overview dashboard. This is the dashboard that I spent the most time, and this is the dashboard that within years I have been adding a lot of feedback from the community. So you can see the cluster status on the top, where you can see the uptime, the CPU usage, RAM usage, vCenter, cluster, ESXi, VM summary, and Datastore summary. That's probably like the whole overall what you have from vSphere. Then later on, you can see the cluster CPU usage. In the case that you have different clusters, you will be able to see the different clusters on there. Cluster RAM usage in percentage as well, and then cluster network usage and cluster storage adapter. Then you have the data stores usage capacity on this fancy, retro LCD. Reminds me a bit of the Back to the Future, on the car. I think the dates or something like that, they really remind me those colors and that appearance. It's really funny. And the data storage status, I add them as well in speedometers, because sometimes I know that people doesn't like the retro LCD and they prefer speedometers. So you have both options, and you can always, because these dashboards are for you and are open, you can always change colors, change the order, remove what you do not need. Finally, we have the hypervisor status on here. It's just a few 4 panels with the hypervisor CPU, hypervisor memory, hypervisor net usage, and the vCenter CPU RAM. And on this same one dashboard, you have as well a virtual machine status with a lot of things like the CPU usage in percentage, with all of your VMs, the memory usage, CPU ready, the network usage, and so on. You can see there are so many, and probably it is really, really busy, but it's a really good dashboard to have just one view across your whole estate. Now, then there are another dashboards which they are a bit better for granular monitoring. For example, this is the one about ESXi hosts, right? So you can see the uptime, CPU usage, RAM usage, and CPU usage and RAM usage in percentage. So one is in gigabytes and the CPU in megahertz, and the other is in percentage. Once again, few metrics on here, like the CPU ready, super important to have here and keep an eye on them, and total disk latency, network usage, and so on. As a quick point on here, you have as well, if you follow you just go into the Grafana dashboards or into my blog, we have as well monitoring for ESXi on ARM, which is really important. Probably the most important thing is for the temperature, or if you are putting this on a Raspberry Pi or something like that, you want to get that monitoring of that temperature, so you don't fry those ARM devices. So it's just a quick thing I wanted to mention, that we have a specific part for the temperature as well for ARM. talking about temperature, this is not related to VMware, but related to the flexibility of this solution, this stick monitor. It includes already ready to work monitoring of the IPMIs, so you can see how simple and how quickly you can get the temperature across all your clusters on here. The VMs as well, you can have this granular visibility of the VMs. So for example, the CPU ready once again, the CPU usage, and you can filter there on top. Either you cannot see it here, but on your Grafana dashboard, you will be able to filter per the VM that you want to see these metrics. The data stores more in detail, and probably just the capacity summary. Nothing fancy other than just get all of this on one view. And finally, please take your survey today around this code session with me. Just rated it, and if you like it, well, just thumbs up, rate it as better as you can, and please give me feedback on the social media. I will be waiting for you over there, social media. So yes, thank you so much, and enjoy VMworld 2021. Thanks. Bye.